Hello, everyone. Welcome to Random Encounter 302 or 302. My name is Jono Logan, and we have entered into what I tend to think of as the second half of the summer. So, July and August. I know that summer continues into September, but school starts in September. That's not summer, and everybody knows it. This is summer. This is August. We're in for a very, very hot month, I think, everywhere in North America. Today it was 31 degrees, 32 degrees in Celsius, of course, in Toronto. I have no idea how that converts to Fahrenheit. I'm assuming it's about
hot.
one. Yeah, I'm assuming it's about maybe 105, somewhere in the hundreds.
Yeah, it's close at least, if the high 90s maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. In Canada, we have this hybrid system because of America, and it is like our cooking times, like our cooking temperatures are in Fahrenheit, but our outdoor temperatures are in Celsius. And like, I have no idea what my temperature would be if I had a fever in Celsius, but I do in Fahrenheit. So it's weird.
You said 32, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 89 degrees Fahrenheit, so 90. So it's hot. It's hot.
I was way off. Yes, it's hot. It was hot here today. Not as hot as various places in the States, but hot. Anyway, as you've heard, Ben is here with us today.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Yes. So it's pretty hot and toasty here, and I was thinking we go into something a little foggier, like a steam powered,
steamier, you might say. Yeah,
steamier, like Victorian steamy powered kind of thing. And this is going to be a setup for something we're going to talk about a little bit later. But right now we're going to talk about Steamworld Heist 2. So Steamworld Heist, it's the latest entry in the Steamworld series, which is a really interesting series. It was originally developed by Image and Form. It's now Image and Form, I believe, formed a new company with a bunch of others called Thunderful.
They merged with another developer, and now they publish games, and they still develop games as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and the SteamWorld series, it takes place in a SteamWorld-powered world that's inhabited by steam-powered robots. And their first game was SteamWorld Tower Defense, which a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people know about. The game that everyone does know about, though, is SteamWorld Dig, which was a Metroidvania mining platformer game. And then that was followed up by SteamWorld Heist in 2015, and that was followed up by SteamWorld Dig 2, and that was followed up by SteamWorld Quest Hand of Gilgamesh, which I reviewed back in 2019 and I did not like. And the latest one was last year. It was SteamWorld Build, which was a city builder that combined a number of different kinds of gameplay. But we have a brand new one out, and it's SteamWorld Heist 2. So, like I said before, SteamWorld Heist was it was a turn-based strategy game, but instead of having like the usual overhead kind of XCOM style, it used a side-scrolling type perspective. So it actually looked a lot like SteamWorld Dig. And it's an interesting kind of game where you do heists, essentially. You fly around in space on your spaceship. And it was a very popular game when it came out, and popular enough that it got this sequel. Ben, you played the original, right?
Yes, I did.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I loved it. I famously back then I would call it the best turn-based strategy game I felt that came out in like that decade.
Mm-hmm.
So which is pretty high praise, but I really loved it. I thought they just did a really great job with adapting the turn-based strategy formula to a side-scrolling presentation, which isn't something that you see a lot. And they also, one thing, with the XCOM reboot, for example, that came out in like 2012, like one of the memes that came out of that is like your character and the alien are right next to each other, and then your gun is like pointed right at their head, and it's just like 58% chance to hit or whatever, right? And SteamWorld Heist got rid of that completely. So you manually aim your shots, and they shoot a real projectile. And if you aimed correctly, then it's gonna hit like 100 times out of 100. So it gets rid of some of that dice rolling that could sometimes make XCOM frustrating.
Yeah. So basically, in a weird way, like turn-based side-scrolling mechanics.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And it was a pretty looking game. I thought it was very stylish. I mean, the entire SteamWorld. I have my problems with Quest, but like one of the problems was not with the design. These games are gorgeous, beautiful designs. And SteamWorld Heist 2. So it was announced, there were a lot of great expectations about it. What were your expectations for it?
Yeah, I mean, I was really shocked because it's been almost 10 years since the original came out. So I kind of thought that like they did Heist and that was kind of it, and we wouldn't really see the series again, especially because they've been, everything changed with Image and Form becoming Thunderful, and they've done all kind of different games since then. So I just thought like, well, most of the Steamworld games have been one and done except for Dig, so that one probably will be two. So I was really surprised, and then when they showed it, it's very different in terms of the aesthetic and the setting and everything. Because now this one takes a more like tropical seafaring setting.
Yeah, the first one took place in space. This takes
That's
place
right.
on like a vaguely ocean world.
Yes, yes, and it's still within the same universe. So it's one planet that exists in that universe, right? That Steambots live on, and so it just so happens that this planet is covered mostly in water, which sounds like a good place for Steambots to live since they need water to power their bodies. But in the case of this game, it's actually not good because the water. They're having like a water crisis where there's plenty of water, but something's happened to the water to make it corrosive to the insides of the Steambots. So now all of a sudden they're having to just use whatever sources of fresh water that they can get to, be their lifeblood, basically. And that's caused a huge issue among the Steambot community on the planet. And so the main character, Captain Leeway, that's his kind of quest, is to get to the bottom of what's happening to the water.
Mm-hmm. Is this a direct sequel to the original, like the plot lines, maybe some returning characters, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I can't really speak to any returning characters, but it is in the same universe. It is technically a direct sequel, but all the playable characters are new. The setting's completely new. Mm-hmm. So if you didn't play the first one, you're not missing anything if you just pick up the second one.
Well, that's exciting. The interesting thing about this world is how, well, not just this world, this universe, is how the Steamworld universe has developed over time. And like the original Steamworld Dig was very much a Wild Western kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the look, if not, I mean, they were in space, but the look of Heist 1 was very much kind of I looked at it and it was Wild West, almost like, I imagine like a train heist, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
yeah, for sure.
It seems like this is moving more into a piratey sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of taking that idea of like you're, in Heist 1, you're kind of like a space pirate. Mm-hmm. And in this one, you're like a pirate on water, like a literal pirate.
Jar. Yes. And because of that, and because of the new location, they do have some room there for more world building, because literally they're building a new world.
Yes, and that's a big change, actually, with Steamworld Heist 2 compared to the first one, is that there's actually an overworld map this time that you explore in real time with your ship. So at the beginning of the game, you get a ship, and then all of the missions and the locations and everything are laid out on the overworld map, and you actually sail around and then can visit locations or initiate missions by sailing up to them, that sort of thing.
One of the things about SteamWorld that is very, very interesting, I find, is the tone of the game. It usually, how can I put this? It's silly in many ways. I mean, they're SteamWorld, very cartoony steam-powered robots, but it does manage to hit some of the stakes are very, very real for these characters, which is what makes a good, I know it's not animated, but that's what makes a good animated series good, and more than just for kids. It's the stakes. This game has some stakes to it.
Yeah, I would definitely say that it still has that kind of light tone and silly tone that the other SteamWorld games have, but there are some broader stakes and also some emotional stakes to the main character's journey. So a big part of the storyline is that Captain Leeway is kind of in the shadow of his mother, who was a really famous captain. That she has like the title of Krakenbane because there was this kraken that was like terrorizing the ocean, and she defeated it. And so she's known as this great hero, and so everybody just assumes, oh well, he's also going to be a great hero. And
so we're playing as a nepo baby.
Yeah, exactly. And he kind of has to prove himself and prove that he can live up to that kind of reputation that he has due to his relationship to his mother, which is, I think an interesting kind of emotional hook for the character and journey for the character to go through that some of the other SteamWorld games maybe haven't explored as much, and just gives a little bit of extra depth to the narrative. It's not a super narrative heavy game. Like there are, as you progress through the story missions, there will be some like scenes and characters being introduced, and there's a good amount of side characters and everything, but it's not super narrative focused, but it does give that a little bit more emotional weight. And then the impact on the world from what you're doing is pretty significant. And you because this game is more open, then that gives you more time. Like there are these bars that are dotted around the map, and when you go there, there's like Steambot civilians that are there, and you can talk to them, and that kind of fleshes out the world and makes it feel a lot more alive. And you get a sense of like, how is the crisis affecting them? And then, when you do make progress, then they'll comment on that and everything. So you get a lot more, it just feels a lot more lived in and real than maybe some of the past SteamWorld games have.
Yeah, so it's advanced the formula.
Mm-hmm.
As much of a formula as this series can have. I mean, that's one of the things I most admire about this series is that very few sequels, I mean, this is the second sequel in the series, but they always try something new with gameplay. They try different genres, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of genres, as we said, this is a turn-based strategy game. How does the gameplay work here?
Yeah, so typically when you go into a mission, you'll pick from your group of Steambots. You can have up to 10 in your party. By the end of the game, you'll have 10. And usually missions, you can only bring a handful, right? So maybe 2 or 3 or 4. Some of the bigger missions, maybe 5 or 6. And so you have this, stable of Steambots you select from, and then they each, have their different classes. And so that's something new they introduced this time, is a class system. So you can change your character's classes to fit different roles, and that you may need to do on the fly depending on what the demands of the missions are. And then when you start a mission, typically, they'll give you a short description of what it is. And then once you go in, most missions have you starting out like basically infiltrating an enemy base. And then you might have different objectives depending on, what the mission type is. So sometimes you might need to grab some loot and then escape. Other times you might need to defend a particular character for a certain number of turns, or survive for a certain number of turns, or there might be a boss character that you have to defeat. So there's a lot of different there's a lot of mission variety, and basically it's turn-based combat. Your characters, it's a cover-based system, a lot like XCOM. So, you can position your characters behind cover, and then when you're going to do an action, like attack, you have to line up your shots, and then, fire and, hopefully hit the enemy. And yeah, so, it's a lot like XCOM, but there's just more, because it's the side-scrolling presentation, and then it's more player agency driven, because you're doing all the aiming yourself. When you're getting to cover, the cover is like real cover. So if part of your character is exposed, then that part is vulnerable to the enemy. There's not as much dice rolling and everything behind.
More kinetic.
Yeah, more kinetic. Exactly.
You mentioned classes. Just out of curiosity, what was your favorite class in the game? You're like, if you had to go into any fight, just doesn't matter what would you want to, who would you want on your team?
Yeah, so I would say it's hard to choose between. So there's the engineer class, and that's like your utility class. So they buff other units, they can heal other units, and they use a pistol, which is the weakest weapon in the game. But their specific class thing is they actually get to shoot twice every turn. So usually when you would take a shot, you get to take one shot, and that ends your character's turn immediately. But they always get to shoot twice. So that's really useful, especially if there's 2 different enemies that are low on health, and you want to be able to take them both out in one turn, or you want to destroy some environmental objects like an explosive barrel, for example, stuff like that. So there's just a lot of really good utility with them, even if they're not the strongest characters damage-wise.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it sounds like while the turn-based tactical combat is still rock solid, they tried something a little new, and it doesn't sound like it worked quite as well as they would hope, and that was naval combat. which
Yeah.
takes place on the map. Now you're in a boat, so and
Yes,
you're on the high seas, so it makes sense that there would be naval combat. But
it does.
it
Yeah.
sounds like it is very different, and also outside. It's not a tactical based system. It's real time.
Yes, that's correct. So the way the naval combat works is just you explore when you're sailing around. You explore in real time, right? And so when you're out on the open seas, there'll be enemy ships that might come into your path, and then when they see you, they'll initiate combat. And so basically, combat, you have very limited control over combat. And I think that's kind of the main problem with the naval combat is that you always have control over your ship's positioning and where you're moving.
Hmm.
But you have what, depending on what weapon you have equipped, then you have certain aim lines, and then the weapons just fire automatically when an enemy gets into range.
Hmm.
So it's almost like if you've ever played like Vampire Survivors, it's almost like that where the attacking is automatic and you're really just positioning your ship.
Mm.
So the problem with that is that early in the game you don't have very many weapons. So, once your stuff fires and has to like recharge, you're pretty much a sitting duck. So it's a lot of you like maneuvering around, dodging enemy fire, and then hopefully trying to get in position to attack. But because you can't aim independently of the way you move, then it's, sometimes when you're getting out of the way, that's also making your attacks miss, right? So it
Mm.
just feels a little clunky. And then later in the game, you get a bunch of upgrades for your ship. And then
Hmm.
at that point, the naval combat is just extremely easy. So you
Mm.
don't really even need to dodge out of enemy fire because you have so much shields and armor and stuff on your ship. You can just take a bunch of hits. And if you have a bunch of weapons, they'll all just fire at once because right when you get close, and then like almost always automatically destroy the enemy ship. So it just feels like there's like a balance issue there. And I wish that there would have been more control.
Mm.
Like if it controlled more like a twin stick shooter does, then I think it would have been a lot better. Because then you would have had a lot more control over what's happening in the battles. But as it is now, you kind of just like sail up into the middle of a group of enemies, and then your weapons just fire automatically, and then hopefully you won. And if not, you have to
Oh.
sail away and wait till your stuff recharges to go do it again.
I can see how that would be annoying because one of the best things about the best kind of tactical games is that every encounter, every fight is in many ways it the best ones are in many ways a puzzle.
Hmm.
You need to put it together. You need to figure out, okay, who do I need? Who do I need to counter the other side? You need to figure out the tricks. It's a puzzle essentially,
Yeah.
and they're bespoke as a result. Like these are usually very rarely randomized encounters. They're on specific maps, especially in a game like this. Whereas the naval combat sounds like it is just kind of there, and it doesn't really have anything to do with the tactics side of the game,
Yeah.
which
And
is the
that,
disconnect.
yes, exactly. And I think that's the biggest issue is that they feel so separated from each other. And the tactical combat is there's so much depth to it. And there's so much also room for player skill expression. Like you have to be able to
Mm.
aim, you have to pay attention to where your characters are positioned, to make sure they are actually hidden behind cover and things like that.
Their strategy.
Yeah, a lot of strategy, and none of that stuff carries over into the naval combat, and so it just feels like it doesn't really belong. And like
What is this doing
conceptually,
here? Yeah.
yeah, conceptually it belongs in the game because like that's the setting of the game, but the gameplay is just so at odds with the turn-based combat. Yeah.
Do you think that could be improved? Let's say they do Steamworld Heist 3, which we wouldn't see until, based on this, we wouldn't see until 20, oh, good God, 2035. That's okay. They probably should make the ship to ship combat a lot more tactical in nature rather than real time, just to match with the overall style of the game, really.
Yeah, the thing that I did like about adding the ship elements and the sailing elements is that the exploration of the world and like finding new locations, and they have some kind of some kind of obstacle courses that you have to go through, navigate using the ship's like abilities that you unlock and things like that. I thought all those sections were actually really good. It almost has like a Metroidvania feel a little bit, where sometimes when you unlock a new ability for your ship, you go back to an old area and then you can explore
I
locations you
like
couldn't
that.
before. Yeah, it's really neat. And so if they were to do another one, I would want them to keep the ship based exploration and using that overworld method of like traversing and finding new missions and all that, but take out the real time combat and either have, maybe when a ship came into your path, that would start like a smaller turn based skirmish where like you
Mm.
board the ship or they board your ship or something like that,
Oh
or
yeah.
just remove the combat entirely from those sections and only have them in the missions and then just keep the exploration parts.
Mm.
Because that stuff all worked really well. And it
Yeah.
just, I think when you have a game that's so well designed and tightly tuned in all the other elements, then the naval combat that's just a little disappointing stands out so much more because the rest of the game is so good.
Mm. And the open world, it's not is it a completely open world or is it like a more limited open world?
So it is like it's pretty much like a traditional, RPG overworld,
Okay.
where except that you're not traveling on land, you're traveling on sea. But
Yeah.
in all other respects, it's basically an overworld. So when you get to a location, you like disembark your ship, and then it's a separate like loading screen in a separate location and all that. And there, it is gated by progress, but as you get further in the game, you can always return to old areas, and sometimes you have to for the story and things like that. So once you're further in the game, it feels a lot more open than it was at the beginning.
Yeah, the first game was very, very linear. This seems like it's a little bit more open in how you can approach various missions.
Yes, that's true, and I thought that was one of the really good things that they improved in this game versus the last game is that occasionally in the first game, if you were on a particular mission and it was really challenging or difficult for you or your party at that time, then that could be kind of a roadblock. But you don't get that as much here because you have every area. You'll need to earn a certain amount of reputation, and you earn reputation through completing missions. But the level of reputation you need to progress is always less than the total number of missions.
Mhm.
So if there is a particular mission that is giving you trouble, you can always go and find a different mission to do and still make progress in the story. And so I think, that's really great from an approachability aspect of the game. People, if they do get stuck on one particularly hard mission, they can just go do something else. And then when they're more powerful, they can come back later and do it if they want.
Yeah, it's always a struggle, I would imagine, for developers between the linearity and the open world because linear games have the advantage of it's a guided experience,
Mm-hmm.
literally, so you can really fine tune the difficulty curve. Whereas with open worlds, the difficulty curve is way harder to do because people can find themselves in over their head based on where they go.
That's
Um,
true. Yeah. And I think they have a nice balance here because they do gate your progression
mm,
based, what areas you can go to based on your story progression. But there's
mhm.
always enough openness to it that you have multiple choices at every point that you're at in the game. And so it strikes a nice balance between those two.
Nice. Well, we were talking. I mean, I talked quite a bit at the beginning about how striking the Steam World, the Steam World house style, so to speak, is of the various Steam robots. And looking at some screenshots and some footage, this game certainly leans into that with some gorgeous, gorgeous, cartoony steampunk robot designs.
Hmm.
So the game looks great, I assume.
Yeah, it's great. I love the art style, and I think that art style carries over from the overworld and in the actual side-scrolling missions. And the because this game, I was talking about those bars in different locations you can actually explore on foot.
Hmm.
That is all really great. Another thing that's really cool aesthetically about the game is that they have this steampunk band called Steam Powered Giraffe. I don't know if you've heard of them before, but they do a lot of music in the game.
Oh,
So not typically when you're in missions or in the overworld, but when you go into these bars, a lot of times they'll have like Steambot musicians playing, and then they'll play the songs that this band wrote and performed.
oh, that is cool.
Yeah, which is really neat, and they'll change depending on when you go. So when you go into the bar, every time you go in, it'll be a different song. And so there's like I don't know how many songs are in the game, but I must have heard at least like 10 different songs. So and there may be even more than that. So it's that part of it is really cool to have like vocal tracks done by like a real professional band. in the game, as well as the music that you have during combat and in the overworld is more ambient, but it's also really good.
An interesting thing with the visual design, though, is that we are dealing with different kinds of robots. Like we have the steampunk robots. We
Mm-hmm.
know what those look like, but there are diesel powered robots. There are also kind of creepy robots that have bones in places. Like the
Yeah.
visual design expands itself a little bit beyond what traditionally SteamWorld games look like.
Yeah. So there's two major factions in the game that you spend most of the game fighting against. Those are the Navy bots or the Royal Navy, who are all diesel bots. So they all
Mm-hmm.
run on oil instead of water,
Yeah.
and then and they have a kind of like very hard, militaristic look to them. And then there's the Rattlers, who are they were Steambots, but they're like part of this cult. And so as part of that, they changed out all their metal parts for bone parts. And they have a more like tribalistic kind of look to them. And that also, impacts the gameplay too. So the Rattlers and the Royal Navy both have different play styles to go along with, their different aesthetics. And that's really cool. There's a lot of variety that the game gets out of that, and sometimes they mix the two together. So you have missions where you have to fight both at one time, and they're fighting each other. So that's it helps it be visually distinct from both the first game and the other games in the SteamWorld series. I would say it gives the planet that you're on in this game like its own really unique feel and identity.
Mm-hmm. Neat. Um, Finally, I just wanted to ask you. This game, it's not a small game. Like there's a good 30 hours worth of
Oh yeah,
content here.
yeah.
So once it's not a super fast playthrough, which is 30 hours manageable, which is a point in its favor, I think. How does this stand out to you in terms of a turn-based strategy game with RPG elements? Because I mean, there are various things. There's Mario plus Rabbids, obviously XCOM.
Mhm.
There are so many tactical games out there. Why does this really connect with you?
Yeah, I think that the real strength of the Heist series, and this one in particular, is that it's able to carry over a lot of that mechanical depth that you see in games like Final Fantasy Tactics or XCOM, but in a format that's maybe a little more approachable to people who aren't super familiar with turn-based strategy games.
Hmm.
Because it is like that side-scrolling presentation. I think that's a presentation of games that a lot of people really understand, and it kind of eliminates some of the difficult complexity that can come with a lot of turn-based strategy games. So you just being in that two-dimensional framework, I think just makes it more approachable, and the fact that you're doing all the aiming yourself and the cover is very there's a lot of immediacy to it because you can just visually see if my character's exposed, they'll get hit. If they're not, they won't.
Hmm.
That takes a lot of the guesswork too out of the game. And I think a lot of what can be intimidating about turn-based strategy games is that sense of what's going on behind the hood.
Mm.
I only have a 60% chance to hit, but I don't really understand why. There's all these complex variables that are going into that. Whereas this kind of eliminates all that, but doesn't eliminate the things that make turn-based strategy games fun.
Hmm. Good. I really hope this isn't going to be the end of the SteamWorld games. I think this will sell fine, and I hope there's more of them. I have to admit, SteamWorld Quest took some of the wind out of my sails when it came to my enjoyment of them. And it's really nice to hear that Heist 2 has recaptured I guess the what made the original so damn good, and that it could continue into the future, hopefully with different. I mean, what would you hope for if you had to a next SteamWorld game? What genre would you want?
Yeah. Wow. That's a good question. I would almost, I kind of I like the aesthetic that they went for with SteamWorld Quest, that kind of fantasy like swords and sorcery thing.
Hmm.
So I think it would be interesting if they did that, but with the mechanics of SteamWorld Heist, which I think would be a lot different since so much of the gameplay in SteamWorld Heist, both games, is like guns and ranged combat. So
Mhm.
if you had a lot more melee or magic combat, they might have to adapt some of the mechanics and stuff. But I think that would be really interesting to see. And I think that would also be what a lot of people expect from a turn-based strategy game. So
Mhm.
it might appeal to a wider audience too.
Yeah. Personally, I don't know. There's so many different directions they could take it. They could take it in a visual novel direction. They could do, I don't know, just do an Ace Attorney, do a steampunk attorney, do steampunk attorney. I would play that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was surprised. Like, I liked the story in this game, and I liked the little bits of world building that they did. So I think, a really narrative focused game isn't something that they've done with this series yet. But I think you're right. I think it could be really interesting because there is so much charm to the kind of world they've created and the characters,
Mhm.
and it'd be cool to see those kind of shine in a game that's more based around that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to pivot now. As I mentioned earlier, we were talking about a steamy London. I know it's foggy London, but uh, we're going to do something a little bit different with the next segment, the next game we're talking about, because it's a game, but it's not. It's a mod. Uh, I suspect that any Fallout fans out there may have heard some of the news over the last couple of days that one of the biggest mods in Fallout history has released. So, brief overview of Fallout modding. I'm sure that many people know this. Fallout and all Bethesda games have a very rich history of fan mods. People coming in and creating new content for the game that is seamlessly woven into the game. So for Fallout 4, which was a notoriously broken game when it first got released, fans came in and there's the unofficial Fallout 4 patch, which is kind of if you're going to play Fallout 4 on PC especially, you got to download this patch. But there are other ones that fixed many of the criticisms many of the folks had about the game. There's a full dialogue interface which replaces the 4 points dialogue with like a dialogue list. There's one of my favorites is called Start Me Up, that if you've ever played Fallout 4, it has this really big prologue that takes like a good 20,
Yeah.
20, 30 minutes to get through. Start Me Up literally eliminates that, and you make your character standing in front of the mirror, and then a new menu pops up saying, "This is just a dream. What's my job, and where am I?" And it will just place you in the overworld with a random character with randomized starter gear, and you just pick it up from there. So makes repeat playthroughs very good. Now, there are also some incredibly impressive Fallout 4 DLC style mods that add like full story content, quests, voice lines. There's Fusion City Rising. Tales from the Commonwealth is amazing because it just weaves in a lot more encounters into the Commonwealth. Probably one of the most popular ones is Sim Settlements and Sim Settlements 2, which completely revamps the settlement system into something a little bit more resembling Sim City, but also adds this incredibly complex quest line that weaves perfectly into the game. However, there is a new mod. It's called Fallout London, and it is one of the most ambitious fan-made mods I think that's ever been created. It's a complete conversion. It's not taking place in the Commonwealth. It has nothing to do with Fallout 4. It just uses the Fallout 4 assets, and a lot of new assets too. It was announced 5 years ago, so it's been in development for 5 years. And you might be able to tell from the thing, it takes Fallout, which is traditionally a video game that celebrates Americana, especially 1950s Americana, and it puts it into a post-apocalyptic version of London, just about 200 years after the bombs dropped. So it's a fan mod. So technically speaking, it's fan fiction. So this is not canon, but it is. If it was canon, it would be about 200 years after the bombs dropped, and you're exploring London in the post-apocalypse. You take the role of the Wayfarer, which is a great name for the character, like Lone Wanderer, the Wayfarer. It's very British, and they've just recreated London. I've been to London. London is an incredible city, and they've done this astounding recreation of London set in the Fallout universe. So it still looks like Fallout, but there are hundreds of quests in it. There are tons of factions. There are 7 full companions with companion quests, as per usual, multiple story paths, and it is extremely British, like unbelievably British. They've translated, I don't know how the hell they managed this. They've translated the tone of Fallout, and they've added a distinct British flair. So just for an example, while there are lots of guns and lots of ammo, there is a renewed emphasis on melee combat because British culture doesn't quite celebrate guns the same way as America does, and logically, there would be fewer guns in the UK. All the voice actors are British, or they are doing their best with British accents. And in fact, they have some voice actors who are professionals. Freaked me the hell out. I started the game, and at the game, you wake up in a tank, and there are two scientists talking to you. And I'm just listening to two scientists, and I'm like, wow, this is astoundingly good voice acting for a mod. And they sound really familiar too. And then one of the voice actors, one of the scientists, trilled an R really hard. And I said, wait a sec, is that Sylvester McCoy, the seventh Doctor? And then the other scientist opened his mouth, and I was like, that's Colin Baker, the sixth Doctor. How in the hell did they get Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy in this from Doctor Who? And that's just the beginning. There are a lot of really good performances in this, especially for a mod. And the amazing thing about it is, like all mods, at least all mods not provided by Bethesda, it's free. You do need to own Fallout 4 Game of the Year Edition and all of its DLC. It is not easy to install. I will say that. And right now, especially because it's early days, it's buggy. Like, it's not Fallout New Vegas on release levels of buggy, but it's pretty buggy. And it's a big pain in the butt to install. In fact, the usual way to install mods from Fallout 4 and most Fallout games is to go on Nexus and have a mod manager, and you download the mods from there, and the mod manager kind of inserts the mods into your load order that the game loads up, and it in theory, it should seamlessly put the mods into the game. However, Fallout London is so big that wouldn't work. They couldn't host it on Nexus. So they went into a partnership with GOG. So you actually, good old games, you have to go to GOG to get the mod. It works, and there's an installer. If you have the GOG version of Fallout 4, the one you bought there, it works seamlessly. If not, they provide detailed instructions on how to install it. If anyone is listening right now, go on the Fallout London subreddit. There are some really good guides on there to help you out, because I figured a lot of it out by trial and error, and I was getting a lot of crashes. And then eventually I figured it out, and the game runs. It runs about as well as Fallout 4, which is not great, but it runs. The big thing for me is that you have to go into your file system. You have to find like your Fallout 4 game folder, not the installation, the place that has all of your save games and your settings. Make a copy of it, delete the original. You really do need an original copy of this game. Like, a completely clean install makes a lot of the technical hiccups go away. Anyway, the point is that this is pretty much a brand new full-out Fallout game. It's massive. The world is about as big as Fallout 4, except it's a lot more urban. Like, Boston was just like a little piece of the map in Fallout 4. London is it's most of the map. Like, most of the time you're walking like down streets with skyscrapers and things like that. It's quite a remarkable thing that these modders have done, with so many custom assets too, custom art, new radio stations that feature more appropriate British music. But while they still have the old, they worked it in where they're still the American soundtrack. You're still going to get Atom Bomb Baby and Bongo Bongo Bongo. Don't worry, it's in there. And there's also a new classical station, which is the BBN. It's the BBC. It's the BB, and it's all classical. Very much honoring canon. I'm just really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. I'm about I'd say about maybe 20 hours into it. And I am exploring. It's the same old Fallout style. There are quest markers there are location markers outlined, and you head towards the location markers, and you get to it, and you hear a cha-ching, and you get a little bit of experience, and it tells you a new location, and you're like, oh boy. And some of the locations, especially if you've been to London, are amazing, because I've been there, and they've recreated many of these places. Like, the British Museum is in there. London Bridge is in there. Tower Bridge is in there. Actually, that's a funny one. Apparently, people were trying to figure out how to do a quest, and someone on Reddit wrote a little walkthrough, and they're like, okay, you have to go to get the first settlement. And they say, okay, you have to go to London Bridge. You need to talk to this guy. He'll give you a quest to kill these guys, and then you'll get the settlement. And people were pissed because they were like, I went to London Bridge and it's not there. This guy is not there, and there's no quest. And it turns out that they were going to Tower Bridge. They just didn't know the difference, which is a fun little British thing. This is probably one of the most successful mods I've ever played, and I've played a lot of them. I'm just blown away by the scope, the scale, the quality. There are a lot of bugs, not going to lie, but once they polish this thing up a bit, get rid of some of the bugs, and I suspect they're going to be able to rely on. There's already mods for the mod, because that's the way these people go about it, and it's already a better experience than it was on launch a few days ago. So if you are a Fallout 4 fan and you watch the show and you were like, wow, really is a shame that Bethesda didn't have a game to come out sometime after the show to capitalize on the huge amount of goodwill and excitement about the Fallout franchise. Yeah, there's a new Fallout game technically, and you can play it, and it's great. So highly recommend this. Ben, you've played Fallout before, right?
Yes. I played all the mainline Fallout games. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you modded at all?
Not a ton with Fallout. Mostly because like I played 4 mostly on console, and then when they did, they did introduce mods for console eventually, and I did try out some, but they're really limited in what they can do on console mods.
It's technically there's mods available.
Yeah. But I haven't done a lot of modding with the PC versions of Fallout games. But I think it's really cool that they did this. I think like London or the UK is probably not a setting that Bethesda would ever explore themselves for the franchise. So it's really cool to see, exploration of that part of the world in the Fallout universe, and it's a really good opportunity for fans to do something that Bethesda's not going to do. And
you mean create a new Fallout game?
Yeah, right. Exactly. People were so hyped after the Fallout show that they started playing Fallout 76 again. They're so desperate for.
hey, I will hear no Fallout 76 slander on this show, good sir.
Yeah, so I think it's really cool, and I think a lot of what people have an issue with like fans, especially with modern Fallout, is Bethesda's approach to like the writing and the quest design and stuff. And so mods like this just give the opportunity for fans to kind of, express those parts of the game that Bethesda's maybe put less emphasis on. And like you were saying, a lot of the mods that already exist for Fallout 4 are really focused on doing that. And so it's really cool to see people be able to do that, but not chained to the setting that Bethesda picked for the last game, that they're just going to, we can do our whole new setting, and that just opens up the possibilities for storytelling and quest design and stuff.
Well, that's a problem with you. That's a problem with the Fallout series. And I even noticed this with the show, is that they're kind of stuck at this point. Like we have explored post-apocalyptic America. We've explored pre-apocalyptic America. We know all about, like, there's no mystery about Vault-Tec. We know who Vault-Tec is. We know who all these corporations are. There's not a lot of new lore that can be introduced into the series because nothing new is really created. The game's central conceit is exploring what remains of the world that was. So, and it's been very, very well defined over the course of Fallout 1 and 2 to a lesser extent in terms of the actual visual design, but in terms of the foundational. But then 3, New Vegas, and 4 and 76, there's not a lot of new places that they can explore. Like, yeah, you can go to a new city and you can have Fallout New York set in New York, or a Fallout in San Francisco, or like you could do that. But the world around it is going to be the same. Whereas with Fallout London, you're exploring an entirely new country. And it's like, there are some really, really great, I don't know if you know much about the UK, but have you ever heard of Iron Brew? Iron Brew is I suppose you could call it a beverage. It is a very popular beverage over there, especially in Scotland. And it's orange. In this game, there is Ion Brew, and it is the main competitor of Nuka-Cola. And
Clever.
there's lots of Nuka-Cola in this game too, and it turns out that Nuka-Cola and Ion Brew are having a massive turf war, or were years ago, that just like ended up as like gang warfare in the streets. And you kind of get this feeling too, like you don't. Vault Tech is sort of here, but not really. Like it starts in an underground vault, but it's not Vault Tech. In fact, it seems like the main, again, hell, I'm going to put it like this because it's pretty, the baddies are horribly ripping off Vault-Tec. You come upon a lab in like the first 5 minutes of the game, and there are some Pip Boys there, and they're reverse engineering the Pip Boy, and you pick up the British version. It's called the Attaboy, and it's like a tablet with all Pip Boy functionality, but with a brand new skin on it that is appropriate to Britain. So like, a lot of the technology and a lot of the things are British versions of it, or British corporations that have adapted American innovations or come up with their own. So smart. But it's a constant exploration of discovery too, because you're like, oh, cool, this is a corporation I've never heard before. Mm-hmm. And you go in, and you get to uncover these stories that you aren't aware of. Like if you go into a General Electric's factory in any Fallout game, you know what you're going to expect.
Right.
But if you walk into a robot factory in this game, it might be a little bit different. The fact, like, there are Protectons in this game, and I love it. All the Protectons sound like, their voices sound like Cybermen from 1960s Doctor Who episodes. Incidentally, there are a few TARDISes in this game too. I don't know what the quest is yet, but randomly as you're walking around, you will find blue police boxes and a psychic signal coming from them, and you need to track them all down. It's loaded with stuff, and like the mysterious stranger is not a Western; he's a secret agent.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I know I sound like I'm raving about this, and guys, it's not perfect. It's not great in some places. It doesn't. Okay, I can't believe I'm about to say this. It doesn't have that Bethesda polish to it. Yeah, I know what that sounds like, Bethesda polish, and the games are buggy disasters when they release, obviously, at least a lot of them. Mm-hmm. But the reality is they are rock solid games when you boil it down, and when the bugs are all ironed out. That's one of the reasons why why Skyrim and Fallout are still popular today. They're really, really good games. There are a few places here where it's like textures are not quite lined up properly, and it's a little bit buggy. But frankly speaking, considering the size of the team, the fact that they didn't have a budget, really, it's fan fiction. They've created shit. They just recreated London. It's crazy, and it's huge. It's absolutely massive. I haven't even seen half the map yet. London is divided in half right now. I've just been exploring. I found like Shakespeare's Globe, which is cool. I haven't gone in it yet because I wanted to complete some of the main quest, and I assume that I'm going to go inside and there's going to be some very self-important actors inside who are going to give me some stupid quest to, I don't know, find an original copy of Shakespeare at the museum or something like that.
Probably.
I'm more excited by Fallout London than I've been about a lot of games for a long time. It's really cool. It's really cool, and it's free. If you like Fallout, if you have a copy of Fallout 4 with all of the DLC, it's not that difficult to download. So I highly recommend that you check this out, especially if you want some more Fallout in your life. It will not just scratch the itch. It doesn't scratch the itch. It like gets rid of the itch. It really does. So much so that Bethesda drives me crazy about the way they treat mods and modders. And if it drives me crazy, I can only imagine how the modders feel. This game was supposed to come out like 5 months ago, but then Bethesda dropped the completely and utterly broken next-gen patch for Fallout 4 that broke most of the mods, and especially older mods like that. It's the reason why this thing is such a pain in the butt to install, is because there's an included downgrader where you have to you have to downgrade to the previous non-next gen version of the game to get it to work properly. Apparently the team worked on it for like 5 months to try to get it working, but the new next gen patch is so buggy that they were like, this isn't worth it. It's giving us it's a terrible experience, and it's not even our fault.
Yeah, I remember there was a problem with the anniversary edition of Skyrim too, that it broke a lot of mods, and people had a hard time adapting their stuff. And then a lot of stuff didn't get adapted just because that game was so old, and a lot of the modders have moved on, and that's kind of sad because all that stuff is kind of inaccessible now if you have the latest version.
Oh yeah. It's incredibly frustrating because in my mind, okay, we're just going to move on to the discussion question now, which is going to be a little bit less of a discussion question and more just Ben and I ranting about modding. What drives me crazy about it is I think that Fallout and Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls series in general, let's just say Bethesda period, a lot of their success in the long term was because of modding. Yes, their games when they were released, especially Skyrim and Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, and obviously New Vegas as well, very, very well received games, very popular. But the reason why they've remained popular over the years is because modders have been consistently providing new content, new experiences, refinements on the gameplay, patching things that Bethesda doesn't bother doing. Bethesda, I think, owes so much to the modding community. And the way they've rewarded, quote unquote, the modding community is they've tried to monetize the mods into like little bite-sized pieces of DLC with the Creation Club. And I don't know what Bethesda's criteria for the Creation Club is, but I've looked at some of the stuff and I'm like, I guess that's kind of cool, but honestly, I don't care. It doesn't like change the way I play the game or doesn't necessarily provide me with a great deal more content. Like I remember for Fallout 4, they released a Tunnel Snakes DLC, little piece of Creation Club. And it was like, we added the Tunnel Snakes from Fallout 3 into Fallout 4. And it's like a barely existent little quest. And the reward is a leather jacket. And it's like, if this was a full-scale mod that would be released on Nexus, I have an odd feeling it would have been a more expansive experience. But Bethesda's version of modding, their monetized modding, it just feels cheap and it doesn't feel worth it in any way, shape, or form.
Well, it's kind of like adapting like horse armor to the modern age.
Yes.
Right? Yeah,
it is. And it's very frustrating considering that I think they owe so much to modding. And like the way they treated the Fallout London team is just shabby, I think. Like they haven't mentioned a thing. And it's like, you guys, this is getting, we're talking about it on Random Encounter and, that's small potatoes compared to IGN talking about it like on the main page. Like this isn't just a little niche thing. This is a massive, massive story and a massive undertaking that people are really excited about. And Bethesda is just like pretending it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in some ways, like, because a lot of the modding community for Bethesda games, like, it's based around this, like, idea in the community of doing the things that, like, Bethesda won't. And there is kind of like I don't know, I guess it's like maybe them ignoring it. Both one gives more cred to the makers of Fallout London, and two is like the best you can hope for from a developer. Because I think most of my experience with like modding or really it comes from like ROM hacks and stuff, right? And a lot of that mostly of Nintendo games. And I mean, if anyone's worse about modding their games than Bethesda, then it's definitely Nintendo, who won't even allow your stuff to exist, right? So it's like, I would rather the approach Bethesda takes, where it's just like pretend it doesn't exist.
Benign neglect.
Yeah, exactly. Than like what Nintendo does, which is like if they find your shit, they'll take it down and scorched earth on everything you've ever done.
The fact that the Kaizo community and the Legend of Zelda randomizer, the fact that these things even still exist is miraculous to me.
Yeah, and most of my experience with it is in the Fire Emblem ROM hacking community, where there's just there's tons of full-length games made out of the pieces of especially the Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem games, and just like really, really high quality work that people have done. And yeah, I mean, you just don't want to, luckily Fire Emblem is a smaller IP for Nintendo, so they tend to just leave it alone, probably because they're just not aware that stuff's going on. But, it's just sad that like they, you feel like you kind of have to hide that stuff or put it, up on, ROM, sites where you get ROMs or whatever, things that are already, bueno for Nintendo and stuff. So, but I think you're right. Like, I think especially for Bethesda, there's a direct relationship, I think, for Bethesda more than any other really major developer or publisher, between people making mods of their games and then repeated sales and continuous sales of their games, right? Like, I think you can definitely, make the claim with a lot of evidence that part of the reason why Skyrim is still sells so many copies every year, and all the Fallout games and everything, is because people that has such a vibrant modding community, and people are continually making content for these games. And that's why people will go on Steam and pay $10 for Skyrim, 10 years, 15 years later, right? So I think that, yeah, they really should give more respect to the modders, because they're not even trying to make money off of your thing, right? Like, they're not asking for any money. All that they're doing is showing their love for the thing that you've created and putting their own spin on that. And if they're not trying to make money, then you should show that mutual respect for them, and be a little more gracious that people care about the thing you've made so much that they want to devote all this time to it.
Yes, and I genuinely can't help but feel like I understand that there are probably some legal reasons why they cannot come out and endorse mods or things like that. There are probably lots of reasons why in terms of their corporate policies. But come on, guys. Like, GOG, the reason why GOG is putting this up and why they're allowing it downloaded from their website is because this thing is going to drive sales of Fallout 4,
Right.
which have already been being driven by the show. And it's like, oh my God, you guys, if you threw your weight behind this, not now, it's out, but if like months and months ago, you had thrown your weight behind it and you had contacted them and said, hey, so we know that you're experiencing some problems with the next gen patch. How about we give you a hand? And like, they could have had a rollout that actually came with Bethesda's support, not published by Bethesda, but Bethesda's support. And it could have been massive for Bethesda because it's a new piece of Fallout content. If they had any massive problems with it, they probably could have said, hey, can you remove this? I don't think they would have, but that could have been a conversation for if not their backing, at least their support. And it could have been really, really big. And it wasn't. God knows if Bethesda had come out with them, I don't think the game would be any less buggy. It's Bethesda. But if anything, it would have had more bugs. But yeah, I'm a giant fan of modding. And in general, just for video games, all modding is just video game fan fiction. And fan fiction has spurred so many amazing creators and advanced properties that, as I understand it, Snowman Gaming just released a video. Actually, it may have been earlier today. I don't know. Have you ever watched anything from Snowman Gaming? He's a YouTube channel.
No, I haven't.
He does a series of videos called Good Game Design and another one called You Need to Play, which just spotlights things. And there are a few videos he did that focus on Mario Kaizo games. And he did one earlier today called, this is Wednesday when we're recording this, Mario Wonder's Got Nothing on ROM Hacks. And really interesting video, but it points out that a lot of the more innovative abilities in Super Mario Wonder, a lot of them clearly were inspired by very famous Kaizo games. So, like, clearly someone's looking at what the fans are doing and going, I'll have that. And that's fine because it's their property and it's their right. But for the love of God, treat the people with more respect. Fan fiction is a legitimate form of expression and cracking down on it only hurts the people who love your stuff. And because of that, I applaud Bethesda for their benign neglect for not going after modders. I just wish that they would either throw their full support behind modding or leave it the hell alone and stop trying to monetize it, because the monetization is cheap and it gives modding a bad name, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I like that people are able to, support themselves off of the creative work they do. And, but there are other avenues for that, right? Like, people have Patreons, or people do, there's a lot of other ways that you take donations or whatever, right? Yeah. And like, I'm always willing to support that. And that is not a corporation coming and taking their cut out of it. You know what I mean? And so that, I think those are better ways to kind of support this kind of creative fan driven work. And I agree. I just think it's, they know that people love modding and they love to download mods for their games, and they're really thinking like, how do we get a piece of that pie, right? It's not motivated out of a desire to make modding more accessible or to give credit or recognition to the people who are making these mods. It's really just to make another buck off of them. And the spirit of fan works is not driven by capitalism. It's not driven by the profit motive, right? And it's just like what we do at RPG Fan, right? We're not doing it to make money. We're doing it for the love of the game, right?
For the love of the game.
Exactly. And so I think it's good to have that, and I think it's that prevents some barriers to accessibility too, right? Like people are able to access these things for free, and I think that's awesome.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Fan fiction. I would argue that fan fiction, and obviously because I'm classifying fan game under fan fiction. Fan fiction is one of the last pure corners of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you look at what the internet's become today compared to what the internet was in, say, the late 90s, early 2000s, fan fiction is still pure. Admittedly, AI is doing its damnedest to attack art, but
yes.
But for the most part, it's still pure. Archive of Our Own is still there. It's still free, and the amount of original works on there is staggering. Yep. And the amount of original works in video games are staggering. Honest to God, if you're a fan of Fallout, if you are looking for something new to play, Fallout London is a great choice. But also, just go onto Nexus and take a look around. Take a look at some of the most endorsed mods. And I think you'll be staggered by the quality and the selection that is available that can make Fallout 4 into, well, in the case of London, a brand new game, but also add to it. Like Stories of the Commonwealth is astounding. It just adds in new random encounters, essentially. It just weaves them in. You just find them. And they are extreme. They're so canon friendly, lore friendly, that you don't even realize it in many cases that it wasn't in the original game. And it just makes the game better.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. That's
so good.
Exists. Yeah.
Or, I mean, in my mind, one of the best things is it's a lore friendly mod that adds an additional 100 songs to Diamond City Radio.
So you don't drive yourself insane after 40 hours of listening to the same ones.
You can only listen to Bongo 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 so many times before you go mad. Well, you know what? I would say that there's only so many times that I can transition into our shop before I go mad, but that's not true. I'm just going to do it again, and I'm going to be completely sane at the end of it. So if you are looking for a way to support us here at RPG Fan, we'd opened a store, and you can find it at www.rpgfan.com/shop. We have telephones. No, we don't. We do actually. We have telephone cases. We have telephone cases. What is this? The 1960s. We have smartphone cases. We have mugs. We have lots of apparel. And we also have our collaboration with Hyperplay RPG, the RPG Fan Review Card Collection, which is a showcase of nearly 300 of our review cards as seen on Instagram. So I would take a look at that because I'm a big fan of this review card collection. Another way to support us is to check out all of our podcasts here. You are currently listening to Random Encounter. Last week, we chatted about the Zelda-like Dungeons of Hinterberg, and we also talked about the remaster of the classic Sega CD JRPG, They. We are not the only other podcast here at RPG Fan. We also have Retro Encounter. The last episode was focused on a game that I only played for the first time a few months ago, Undertale. And I have to say, absolutely magical. Ben, have you ever played Undertale?
I have played Undertale. Yeah, I played it when it came out on the Vita, and I really liked it. I think it's really cool.
Oh, so you didn't know anything about it then? So you probably killed a lot of people.
Well, I did know just because. Well, I used to be a teen librarian. So when Undertale got really huge, like that was when I was a teen librarian, all the teenagers were super into it. So I was pretty spoiled on like the mechanics and like the, pacifism run and all that. So I didn't kill anyone because everybody told me beforehand, don't do that or whatever. But I really enjoyed it. I think like aesthetically, it's really good. It's a really cool game. The character designs are great. The music is excellent.
Can I just say that Teen Librarian sounds like the worst series of young adult novels I've ever heard?
Yeah, more librarian for teens, not a teenager who is a librarian. Yeah.
Teen librarian. um. Anyway, yeah, Undertale. If you enjoyed Undertale, I urge you to check out that podcast. If you're looking for if you're looking for experience that's much less hardcore than Undertale, I recommend checking out the Dark Souls episodes that happened just before it.
Yeah, and I was on those episodes, so
they go well.
Yeah, they went well. Everybody really, Solosi was his first time playing the game, and he really enjoyed it, which I'm not surprised by. I know he liked Demon Souls and Bloodborne, so I knew that he would enjoy Dark Souls. But we had a really good discussion, especially about like the design of the world and how it's pretty unique in the series. That kind of interconnected world design and stuff. So if you're a big Souls head or you've never tried them but you're interested in it, definitely check out that episode.
I haven't listened to those episodes because I think at some point I might try to play Dark Souls, but I also have a feeling that I might. The operative word is try. I think I need to be in a very specific headspace to play Dark Souls, and if I'm not in that headspace, I will bounce off it so hard it will be stupid. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, you should try it, Jono. I think you would like it. I think you would.
I played the 2D Dark Souls inspired Sultan Sanctuary, and I hated it.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Sultan Sanctuary either, but I do love the Souls series, so I wouldn't let that deter you.
Okay. Well, maybe I won't then. We also have Rhythm Encounter, which is RPG Fans Music Podcast. The last episode was an episode focusing in on indie RPG music. And I believe that the episode just got posted today that is focusing on the best DS RPG music. So if you are a fan of indie RPGs or certainly grew up in the DS era of video games, absolutely check that out. Yeah, it just got posted a few minutes ago. Best Nintendo DS RPG music.
Very cool.
Yeah, check that out. If you'd like to get in contact with us here at Random Encounter, you can do so by firing me off a message at podcast@rpgfan.com. If you have any suggestions or feedback or ideas for discussion questions, that kind of thing, would love to hear from you. If you'd like to send me an email, you can do so at jlogan@rpgfan.com, and you can also find me on Mastodon at johnlogan@mastodon.social. Ben, where can we find you online?
You can email me at benloganlove@gmail.com.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, you can share it with your friends. You can help us get the word out there. You can rate us on iTunes or your other podcast players of choice. Then I would love to thank you for coming on the podcast today and chatting with me about Steamworld Heist 2. I really appreciate it. You've been reviewing a lot of games lately, and I genuinely appreciate the time that you've been putting into both writing about the games and coming on the show.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate you having me. It's always a pleasure, and I'm happy to do it anytime.
Yes, thank you for sitting through my little Fallout London rant.
No, it's super interesting. I think I might download it myself now and try it out. So
it's really good. It's genuinely shockingly good. You go into it and you're like, this can't possibly be good, and then it is, and you're like, oh wow, okay, this shouldn't exist, but it does. Man, I'm still blown away. I know we just talked about this. Guys, if you like Fallout 4 and you like Fallout and you like the lore, you gotta look at how they came up with brand new British style lore for Fallout. It's lore friendly, it's immersive, it's canon friendly. It's really quite remarkable what these writers have done with it. The writing is quite good, actually. Although, my God, they have created one of the most irritating little companions. Basically, it's Oliver Twist as a companion. You want to throw him off. You want to throw him off London Bridge by the end of it. Anyway, again, thank you for joining me, Ben. Thank you, everyone out there, for joining us. And whatever you're playing, have fun.